In this film, we consider the urgent challenges created by poor external lighting. We look at why good lighting design should work in synergy with our natural environment, and how smart organisations are waking up to the benefits if we get it right. We include a 5-star best practice guide which picks up some key recommendations from the government's Chief Medical Officer in her annual report for 2017. We start by hearing about a conference recently held in the city of Bath.
Astronomers have been worrying about the unwanted effects of artificial lighting for years. We began to realise that others shared these concerns. So in September 2017, we organised a Starlit Skies conference involving local wildlife groups, environmental groups, the Commission for Dark Skies and local residents. The conference was really stimulating. It was fantastic to see so many different interest groups coming together to agree what we could do. And we had lots of useful actions. 2 important ones: this film, which is for professionals in this area and other industry groups, and the second was a series of looking up events organised by Simon of Bath Astronomers. There have been lots of interesting stories about dark sky reserves and what they've achieved. What's been interesting about this experience is we've been thinking about what we can do in and around the cities where so many of us live.
So we know from a species like the barn owl, if we go back to the 1930s, for example, there were 12,000 pairs in England and Wales. And by the 1980s, that had reduced by about 67%. So they were down to 3,000, or the estimated population was 3,500 pairs. There's been a bit of stability since, so they've gone up slightly and become more stable, and then occasional short declines. And that's basically, when you start looking from the 1980s onwards, you can see a human effect. We're starting to help them, and we're seeing the benefits of conservation projects within that. When we start looking at light pollution and the barn owl, of course this is more of a rural bird, but we have light pollution in rural areas as well. I mean, just look around Bath here, right around the edges of Bath, it appears very rural indeed. But the overspill of light pollution from Bath to those countryside areas would be quite dramatic. And not just owls will be affected, but if you think about bat species, then we're talking about, here we are, we're in Bath, for goodness sake. It has several species of European important species of bat. And when we look at what bats are feeding on, it's insects. And we see the amount of insects, for instance, that collide with artificial lights or that are disrupted in their behaviour by artificial light, it becomes enormous. When we get to the autumn, there's certainly one particular bird I know that migrates through Bath and can be certainly put off course by the amount of light here, and I'm talking about the redwing. So it's about song thrush size, looks superficially like a song thrush, but it has a red stripe down its wing. It comes all the way down from Scandinavia, or probably even further away, to be with us during the winter. And as it approaches the light spill, it's going to be affected because it's used to moving at night. But one of the things I'm really keen on as a practicing conservationist is that we don't keep giving the message of doom and gloom and no hope. And actually I've learnt this morning here in Bath that the engineers are now lighting the river and the canals to a certain way that it's beneficial for bats, but at the same time, very importantly, appeals to human safety. Because of course we need lights for our safety, we need lights for our security, but it's the way in which we light things. Try and suggest that we are divorced from nature is an impossibility. We are a part of it. And therefore some of the things I've been highlighting that affect the wildlife through too much artificial lighting at night will also affect us in the same way. And there's plenty of scientific papers written about the fact of how overspill light can affect us, especially with lack of sleep. The effects on our mental health and our general well-being is obvious. My own son is severely autistic, and I know how he can be affected by too much light at night spilling into his bedroom window. Yeah, we can blank it off, but there's still light coming through. There will be light coming through from somewhere, and that will affect him in quite a dramatic way.
I'm Lucy Bale, and I'm standing in beautiful Cotswold countryside where I work. I work with children doing forest school. I've been working with children for 10 years and having my own forest school for 6 years. And what I've noticed most, when children go outside, they relax almost immediately and are calm and engaging in the nature around them. They're really interested in the environment. So on our walks out to make a den and a camp, they will always ask me loads of questions about what's going on in that season. Why are the plants doing that? Why is there a hole there? Who's made that hole? They're really interested in nature. I take adults out under dark skies as well. It gives incredible healing. I know from my own personal experience, walking out at night into nature does amazing things for you. I often take my shoes off so I'm barefoot walking, and I encourage my adult groups to do that as well.
Human beings possess an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and other forms of life. This has been called biophilia. To strip away diversity and natural darkness and light is not a great idea.
My name is Mike Wells, and I run and founded an ecological practice in Bath, Biodiversity by Design. It provides ecological consultancy services around the world. I have a strong interest in urbanism, and as a result of that I'm also a research fellow at Bath School of Architecture, where I teach green infrastructure design and have done for 15 years. And I've also been elected a built environment expert to the UK Design Council. Locally, I also serve on the Bristol Urban Design Forum, looking at the quality and design of development proposals in the West Country.
Well, we all know in the old saying, it's money that makes the world go round. If you work in development like me, you can come out with arguments ad nauseam about what makes life better and what is nice to have and what's desirable. But you've got to also talk money and economics. And to the extent that that is useful, I do that too. And one aspect of this that I'm very interested in is how, if these effects are real, which I believe they are, and the science is showing more and more that the effects are large, then they are not just going to affect if you're happy or not, but other factors. And if you're sick, you can't work. If you are well, you can work. And it's not just about that effect on the economy, even bigger effects on things like productivity or even creativity in the workplace. And some of the big multinationals are really understanding this, looking at this literature very seriously, because they see it giving them unique selling points and an edge on their competition.
Astronomers are a great asset in helping people to experience the wonder of the night sky that we otherwise might miss or fail to fully appreciate.
My name is Simon Holbeach and I'm the coordinator for Bath Astronomers, and I was involved in the conference last September for Starlit Skies, and since then I've taken responsibility for organising sessions for people to actually go out and enjoy the skies in and around Bath. Only this week we had 25 to 30 people at Freshford who had not seen the skies before, in terms of being guided round to see what is actually available, what they can actually look at with binoculars and with their own eyes to enjoy it.
My name is Tom Harper. I've been involved in a number of government campaigns in the past, working in partnership with industry and society at large. Now, I can see here with this issue, we're moving from a toleration of a certain problem to a point where we've got to get to grips with it. The science now is telling us, even the government's chief medical officer is telling us that this light pollution is a problem. So how do we go about it? And for me, it's always people coming together with a concern, and that concern is rising. The evidence is there for that among people generally. People have got to work in collaboration, and certainly in Bath here, that's what's been happening with astronomers, wildlife groups, residents groups coming together. Then we've got to get creative. We've got to find new ways. Why was this problem not sorted out in the past? We've got to get creative in the way that we get the message out there, the way that these technical problems are dealt with for lighting. So that's my message, really. The time has come for this particular issue. It's time to get on and do something about it.
I'm Peter Cablehorn and I've been an architect for 38 years. During that time I've looked at lots of technical projects and lots of interesting designs. My day job these days is the Deputy Chief Executive of the Construction Products Association, which keeps me in touch with construction products. But I also run a technical group for the RIBA. The first time I encountered a realisation of light pollution was when I went sailing with a friend of mine and we moored in Lolworth Cove. When we came up on deck in the evening and we saw the magnificent sky that was basically shielded from all the light pollution in the southeast by the cliffs, we got a beautiful view of the Milky Way and all the stars that are in it. And it just identified to me how serious light pollution is for most of us in this part of the world.
Now we look at some of the external lighting challenges that we need to address as we briefly run through our 5-star external lighting best practice checklist. You can download a copy of this checklist via a link shown at the end of the film. A professional lighting engineer should be consulted for anything other than minor work or adaptation. Section 1. Design Excellence. Responsible clients and innovative design solutions. The Government Chief Medical Officer recommends that industry leaders should work to 1. Be more transparent about the polluting effects of their activities. 2. Strive to reduce this effect using innovative interventions. And 3. Bring success and best practice to the attention of industry. The report also notes, I recommend that the potential impact of all relevant forms of pollution upon human health should be considered at all stages of local authority planning, considering risk at both consistent low-level exposure as well as intermittent high-level exposure.
There are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of astronomers out there in the UK, all looking up, all passionate about what they do. And their voice should be heard and can be heard by local planners to improve the situation and come up with new solutions so that our towns and our cities are dark above but pleasantly lit from below.
Is much of the lighting provided really necessary? We should challenge all use of lighting and thus eliminate pollution where possible. Why spend money to light a road like this when whole lengths of motorway go unlit?
The architect is normally the first person appointed on any project team and therefore ideal person to set up a strategy going forward. If we're looking at a strategy to control the design of the lighting, it should be addressing the key issues with regard to light pollution right from the start. What that means is ensuring that the lighting is proportionate. We have lighting to model the design, to model the building, to make sure that the lighting works to give the functional requirements you need, but not to excess. A focus on how we address that needs to be established right from the beginning of the project. Once we've set the scene and the client's on board, then actually the minimisation of light pollution will really be on target.
We now summarise the points underpinning design excellence. Challenge the need for lighting. Is it really necessary? Review any existing excessive night light activities and seek alternatives. Consult with local planners, ecologists and residents. Also speak to local astronomers about starlit skies. A well thought through solution will avoid costly rectification later. Any development should integrate biodiversity and consider it an asset. Eliminate or effectively control environmental impacts relating to biodiversity, human health and nuisance. Actively encourage and support designers and installers in seeking subtle, innovative lighting and related control systems. Section 2. Downward and shielded. Light only when and where it is needed. The Government Chief Medical Officer's report notes LEDs coupled with well-designed optical systems provide an opportunity to control light distribution, especially to ensure that light goes onto the surface to be illuminated and not, for example, up into the sky.
Having set the scene, the issue is to look at the design from two perspectives. One, looking at the lighting outside, and two, looking at the lighting inside. A focus on the lighting outside of the building should look at essential lighting, but all of this lighting facing downwards. It should look at lighting correct pathways, lighting areas of the building to bring forward the design, but not in an excessive way. When we focus on the inside lighting, we should look at any light that will escape through roof lights or through glass roofs. That will directly shine upwards. Bringing in shutters and shades into the design will control that, and therefore we can bring forward a design which really controls any potential of light pollution.
This type of external light is poorly designed. It sheds light in all directions. By contrast, we see here a smart solution that uses light in a controlled way to show the majesty of the Bristol Suspension Bridge, whilst not allowing it to shine upwards or away from the bridge. Light is now identified as a pollution issue by the Government Chief Medical Advisor. The UK government itself and private companies worldwide have been successfully taken to court on air pollution and other pollution issues. All those involved in development of the built environment might therefore consider lighting as vulnerable to court action and costly refits going forward. If planners consider that your lighting designs cause material harm to human health or protected species, your application may fail. Now here are the key checkpoints for Section 2. Light travels in straight lines, thus enabling control. Therefore, direct and shield all lighting. Eliminate uplight. It is entirely avoidable. It obscures stars by sky glow pollution and reflects light back from the clouds. Shield around the light to eliminate light spill that causes nuisance to neighbours and damage to the environment. Position and direct to avoid glare into the eyes of pedestrians and drivers. Use timers and movement-activated lighting to reduce impact where practical and safe to do so. Section 3. Use warm lighting hues. Be good to ourselves and the rich biodiversity around us. The Government Chief Medical Officer's report notes, lights can also be provided in a range of colour temperatures where warmer colours are more likely to be appropriate for populated areas. Research undertaken by the University of Exeter and the Barcelona Institute for Global Health established a link between heavy exposure to LED lighting and a doubling of the risk of prostate cancer, as well as a 1.5 times higher chance of breast cancer. The nature of the study means researchers cannot prove a causal link, but they believe the blue light emitted by LEDs may be disrupting the body's circadian rhythm, which in turn affects hormone levels. Both breast and prostate cancer are hormone-related.
The introduction of LED lighting could have been a solution to much of the problems of light pollution because they're very versatile, they're very easily directed. But what we're seeing is LED lights that are far too bright for the job. We need warm white lighting, not the harsh glare that we're seeing being installed all over the country.
To control any lighting scheme, we need to focus on the time of day and also the practical requirements. Under building regulations, any external lighting needs to have controls. The important issues there is to make sure those controls are built in and integrated right from the start. When we focus these days on the technology of the lamps and the lighting system, we can immediately look at LEDs as being a key supporter of producing efficient lighting, of producing lighting that's manageable under a range of colour temperatures, and we can use that advantage to create something which will really be efficient. In terms of LEDs placement, they are small and easily integrated with lots of details, which means that we don't need to go for the big picture lighting. We can focus on small lights tucked under the edges of details. We can go for lights which accent the edge of the situation across the whole building. All of that will give us lighting which is effective and proportionate.
So we can summarise part 3 of our guide as follows. Use warm lighting hues. These are warm white to yellow or amber lights. ideally 3000 Kelvin or below. Avoid start white and cooler hues. Researchers are indicating that blue LED light is detrimental to life and consider that there may well be links to breast and prostate cancer. Section 4. Limit brightness. Dazzle is detrimental to safety, health and our environment. The Government Chief Medical Officer's report notes the importance of ensuring that the observer is shielded from high luminance and sources of light because of glare, which in extreme cases can be very stressful. In this report, the dazzling of car LED lights is highlighted as an example of danger, especially to young and old people. It is likely that bright light of almost any wavelength could have an impact. Disruption of the circadian system can have a major impact on sleep quality and daytime alertness, which in turn impacts well-being and safety. It is a bit like having permanent jet lag. Far from improving safety to pathways, dazzling lights damage our ability to see threats. People are made more vulnerable because their eyes cannot adjust quickly. Excessively bright lights that generally point downward can still pollute the sky above. Here we see an example of how water vapour in the clouds reflects light outwards. Light pollution then spreads out right across the city and surrounding communities, including an area of outstanding natural beauty, subject to darkness and tranquility policies. Education and sports facilities and government buildings urgently need to become exemplars of best practice on lighting pollution and instigate a programme of rectification if necessary. Lottery funding and research grants for environment, sport and health should surely require this. Here are the points for Part 4 of our guide, which aims to limit brightness. Limit lumen levels to avoid reflection from the ground back up to the sky. Avoid blinding people or diminishing our ability to perceive threats to our safety at night. Help us all to get a good night's sleep and protect nocturnal species. Let us not deny future generations the chance to wonder at a starlit sky. Section 5. Actively manage. Lighting is part of our continuous improvement culture in environmental management.
For a very long time, light pollution has been very much pushed to one side. It has not been key and not been a focus of many designers' thinking. It's therefore really crucial at this time that we start to look at the technology available and start to focus on what really can be done. In that respect, we can use BIM, Building Information Modelling, to look with the client at the potential scheme before it actually gets anywhere near construction. We consider very carefully, using specialist software that isn't that expensive, exactly what the effects of the building is going to be on the environment and on the local neighbourhood. I think at the end of the day, future designs will be able to build in flexibility, we'll be able to build in lots of attributes using this kind of analytical technique. And the thing is, the future is very rich with these technologies, using control systems, using LEDs and using analytical systems. So we can create something which will really respect the future and minimise any future light pollution.
And so we come to the final section of our guide. An individual should be designated and empowered to manage and limit lighting. Turn off all lighting immediately when not in use. Include lighting in environmental impact assessments and as part of a continuous improvement culture. Require that contractors also comply for lighting to compounds and facilities.
Light pollution is one of the environmental issues that is so easily fixed. It's not difficult to sort it out with the correct kind of lighting. I call upon all communities, big and small, wherever they happen to be, to address this issue, to really get to grips with light pollution. Because if we solve this problem, everybody wins.
This whole area of endeavour is a huge opportunity to do very, very exciting things. You've heard from Peter Capelhorn about how we could use technology to change and modify our environment in very clever ways. How do we bring the modern, beautifully designed green city in a sort of partnership with that technology, so it becomes a sort of seamless union, one with the other? The great Ken Yang talks about greenery and technology working together, almost like a prosthesis on a human body. They work together and they integrate as a whole rather than being separately considered. And if you look at lighting and the impacts of lighting in that sort of way, the sky's the limit, excusing the pun, about where you can go with it. Lighting isn't just about seeing where you're going, it's about celebration, it's about excitement. How do you do that in a way that's benign and synergizing with all life, not just human life? How can we use those technologies to create new effects we've not even imagined before, and yet look after the natural world?
William Herschel lived in a very different world from ours, but he was very good at working with different people in all kinds of walks of life to do his work. In that sense, he was quite a modern character. He would understand the need for us all to work together to make sure we can enjoy the fruits of modern technology without spoiling the natural world.
You can find a copy of our 5-star guide and further links to information on our website, starlitskies.org.uk.